name is Ryan Talbot, Talbot Development. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm the developer on this project, 315 West Huron. Oh, okay. Is that better?
Oh, that's good.
Wow. All right. Really loud now. Yeah. So Ryan Talbot. I'm the developer here for the 315 West Huron project, and I'm going to go through some of the high-level stuff on the project. Then I'm going to hand it off to our architect and civil engineer to give you some more details. I get the sense a lot of you are here after seeing the MLive article about live and last word, and I just want to kind of address that elephant in the room first. The article didn't make any mention of the fact that I'm working actually very closely with the ownership of Live and Last Word to not only buy the real estate to include it in this project, but also a lot of financial assistance to make sure that they have the ability to relocate and save those businesses and reincarnate them somewhere else. So that wasn't made mention in the article, but the ownership at Live and Last Word wanted to make sure that everybody understood that here. Another thing to mention on that is it's early in discussions, but there's actually a shot at reincarnating the last word in this project as potentially like a rooftop lounge or bar of some kind. So anyway, to get into a little more of the detail of the project, let's go ahead to the next slide. At a high level, this is about a 280 unit project. This is an all-electric building. It'll have solar panels on top. It'll be as sustainable as we can make it under the circumstances. The way I think about it is a building that's built is better than a building that never leaves the page, and so we're going to push as much as we can on sustainable features of the building and still try to get the project done. We also are going to include 42 or 15% of the units as affordable at a 60% AMI level. And so what that means, AMI stands for area median income. If you take the area median income for Washington County, reduce that to a 60% level, then 1/3 of that would be considered affordable for that level. So we're trying to check as many boxes here to make this a project that works not just for the folks who live there, but also for the community. This is going to be a steel frame building. The steel in the building should be about 70 or so % recycled from the get-go, and then of course all of that someday, maybe 100 years from now, as this building reaches the end of its life or whatever it ends up being, all that could be recycled again and turned into something else. And then the site that it's on encompasses mostly the atrium office building that's over there. So if you maybe walked by it before, that will be coming down along with some of the storefronts along First Street to then create the building, the rendering that you see there. From a program and feature standpoint, the building would have a ground floor cafe open to anybody who wants to walk in. So it's a mix of the lobby and the cafe kind of all in one space. And I've done that in other developments in the past, and it's a really nice way to incorporate the residents and the neighbors all into one kind of friendly space. And then, like I mentioned, there's at least an investigation of having a rooftop cocktail bar concept. Now that you know a little bit about the project, a little bit about me as a developer, I'm originally from Michigan. Grew up in the Detroit area. I went to school here at U of M in Ann Arbor. Loved my time here. I met my wife here. In fact, our second daughter's middle name is Ann after Ann Arbor because we got quite our story. But I graduated in 2008 when there was really no jobs to have in Michigan. You guys probably remember. So fortunately for me, my wife was from San Diego, and that was my ticket out to the West Coast to get my career started out there. And after stops in San Diego, Austin, Texas, Northern California, in the Bay Area, where I was at Apple for a while, I found myself in real estate with my brother-in-law in Portland, Oregon. And it was there that I learned the trade and developed a real interest and passion for urban infill multifamily projects. So did about 1,000 units worth of development there before realizing that Michigan was home and it was where I wanted to be and where I wanted to put down roots and raise our kids. And so moved back to Michigan about 3.5 years ago and started working on projects both in Grand Rapids and in Ann Arbor. The type of work I do is called urban infill. So it's taking existing sites in an urban context and And then a focus on, oh, sorry, is that, oh, wow. It's so loud in there.
It sounds good out here when you hold it closer.
Okay,
It
all right.
sounds good, yeah.
Sounds good. I'll back up a minute then. Did you hear all the details about the building at least? Enough of it, okay. Then, yeah, my story, just to recap real quick. Went to school here at U of M, graduated in 2008. Not a lot of jobs to have back then in Michigan, and so I left for the West Coast. I was out in San Diego, then Austin, then San Jose, and then Portland, Oregon is where I learned to develop real estate with my brother-in-law. And then after several years there, about 1,000 units worth of development of urban infill, decided to move back home to Michigan, start my own company here, and focus on similar projects to what we were doing on the West Coast. So sustainable, walkable, urban infill, beautifully designed projects, kind of like what you see here.
What does infill mean?
Sure. Infill is a term that's used to describe development within a city that already exists. So you would take a site that's maybe underutilized, you would either renovate or knock down the building that's there, and then build something new in its place. And that's opposed to maybe going out to land that's never been developed before, cut down all the trees and put some kind of building there. So that's what infill is. So now that you've got at least like the high level on the building, the sustainability elements that we're trying to hit, the affordability of the building, a little bit about the amenities and features that we're going to offer from a neighborhood perspective, I'm going to hand it over to our architects, Hobson Black, who are here in Ann Arbor, to tell you a bit more about the details.
Can everybody hear me? David Nims with Hobson Black, Ann Arbor resident for 20 years. I live just down the street from where the project is going. Just to orient everybody a little bit, we are here adjacent to the Allmendinger building. It is not part of the site. We have a series of low-rise, older buildings, but none are deemed historic and contributing. A lot of them have had a lot of work done over the years, modifications of facades, so they're not in the registry. We are bounded to the north by Huron Street, to the east by First. On the west, we have the elevated railroad berm that cuts across, that's rising about nearly 15 feet above grade on that side, and then Washington directly to the south of us. Topography-wise, we have about 15 feet of fall across the site from east to west. That's something we'll talk about more. Some of the contextual buildings are Ann Arbor City Apartments, Ashley Terrace, new hotel that's planned across the street, the Delana Center, and the Y on the other side of the tracks. We are in the D2 zoning district, and D2 doesn't have a height restriction. We're going to talk a little bit about height, but we are governed by the First Street Overlay District, and that does have a cap at 60 feet. There is a by right allowance because Ryan's shooting for these the affordable units to get a 30% height bonus, which would grant us another 18 feet of height, up to 78 feet of allowable height in that zone. D2 is also a transitional district, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the slides, but it's meant to step down that urban core from the D1 zoning. Also important, 300 feet shows up a lot throughout the zoning ordinance as a trigger when we're going after the affordable bonus for height. 300 feet is a marker from residential to add increased setbacks from the property boundaries, and this slide is to depict that we're over 300 feet from the closest residentially zoned piece of land around this parcel. Just contextual heights. I got to walk over here because I can't read the heights. We're sitting on a site that's currently low rise. The Allmendinger building, which isn't near us or isn't on our property, is 50 feet. We're at 108 for the Village Green Apartments, the Ann Arbor City Apartments. Ashley's Terrace is at 124. As we cross the railroad tracks, the Y is up to 72. And as we go down even a little bit further, the old folks' home is 95 feet. So there's a lot of height in the area. Apologies, I can't remember the name of it. I drive by it every day. Lori Terrace, I knew that. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. we're bounded to directly across First Street by the parking. There's currently a parking lot there that's zone D1, and that is something by right in the Main Street overlay that could go up to 180 feet in height directly across the street from us. Some site constraints, we touched on some of these. We have the Allmendinger building. That's a contributing historic property. We want to preserve that and be good stewards to that contributing historic property. That is over the property line slightly. When they built all these older buildings, they, the survey equipment is just better now, so they're more accurate when they do these when they do the surveys. And so it's over the property line a little bit. So part of what we'll talk about is we're holding back the building by about 32 feet to keep free of and not block the windows and not compromise the historic view that everyone has of that building currently. We also have a floodplain that cuts in, that takes off a large piece of the site to the northwest and a little bit on the southwest. We have the elevated railroad berm, and we have the large topographic shift from east to west that we talked about, that I mentioned earlier. That when we do the calculations for height, we have to average those grades out. So it adds about 7.5 feet, or takes away about 7.5 feet of height we'd be allowed to build, or perceived height from First Street. So what that means is without those restrictions that we're trying to abide by, we could max this site out at 80% by right, which is roughly 29,000 square feet on a floor plate. And we could, as we go up the building, we have to abide by 7 stories by right. And that all works out to roughly 202,000 square feet of built area. But as we start to look at cutting away where we're trying to step back from the Allmendinger building and cutting away where the floodplain is and step back from the railroad tracks, we start to lose quite a lot of area. And so what that translates to is to try to get the same amount of density that we would be allowed to have on site, another 202,000 square feet, but a building that's 3 stories taller. It's a little bit narrower. It respects the Allmendinger building better. It sets back. It's actually going to preserve the first building on the other side of the train embankment, because that is built into that embankment, so that first transition will exist. Tips, as we look to ask, we are going to be seeking a variance for the 3 stories to go from 7 to 10 stories in overall height. We have the floodplain, we have the Allmendinger encroachment, we have the train tracks, and those opportunities and that density, trying to hit that max is what's allowing the development team to hit the sustainability goals and the affordability goals that the city has. Showing what that height would look like, the 120, 4 feet lower than what Ashley's Terrace is. We're just a little bit above where the Village Green apartments are, and it's 50 feet higher than what the YMCA is. And as we look at that in the context of what's allowed, but we talk about D2 being a transition district, that site across the street could go up to 180 feet in the current zoning right now. And as we talk about how that transitions down, this is right in line with the height from what could be built today to this project site at 120 feet to what the Y is. There's about a 50, 60 foot shift in each one of those steps. And we have that train tracks elevated there, kind of really forming a solid wall to prevent a transition from into the residential neighborhood and that character, and kind of really define that downtown core. Some contextual shots to show how that height sits. These are just kind of loaded into Google with the maps of the heights in the building to show how that is relatively the same as what Ashley's Terrace is and what the Village Green apartments are. And this is a good diagram that shows, as we go up to 100 North Main, that steps up even further. So we're hitting that transitional massing quality. And I think with that, we're going to turn it over to the civil engineers.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone here. Sorry. My name is Brandon Cheney. I'm with Naderville. We're the land planners and civil engineers for the project. I'm going to walk you through a few of the existing site conditions as well as the proposed, because this is the Alta survey that our team prepared The green highlighted, this is a 2D image essentially of the two properties, both 315 West Huron as well as 301 West Huron. All right, so now you're looking at the proposed improvements here. So this is with Hobbs and Black, their first floor plan overlaid over top of the survey that I was just showing you here. So vast majority of the site work is going to be included within the right of way. So we've got three main frontages we're contending with. We've got West Huron along the north side. You've got the frontage along First Street along the east frontage, and then the frontage along the west. On the south side, West Washington. Here, we have been working with the DDA to make sure the commercial transit. So we're going to have an 8-foot amenity, 8-foot walking zone, and then you have, excuse me. You also have then it's commercial bicycle, and then also mixed bicycle for both First and Washington. Again, those are going to be full back curb improvements for the DDA standards. And then really quickly here, you're looking at the utility plan. So proposed stormwater currently right now as it exists, there are no stormwater management systems on site. So we would standards, so that's highlighted in the green boxes there. Then you also have sanitary sewer service off of Washington, and then you have water service and fire suppression lead off of First. So with that, I'll hand it back over to David.
Just cover the plans quickly. We talked about how we were bounded on three sides. Our main entrance to the lower level is coming in on Washington Street. That is also a trash service. The trash service will be, we kind of come in, that level is mostly underground. It's going to be primarily serving parking and other utility functions. There will be a stair that is in between the new development and the existing building that is that's there today. The proposal here is showing save that facade, save how it's built into the railroad tracks, but remove the roof, and that'll function as kind of an outdoor pavilion for the residences and qualify for our open space requirements. As we transition up, we are proposing, while we're taking a curb cut away that currently exists on Huron, we're adding a new curb cut on First Street that will have pull-off and loading immediately adjacent to that, and bikes will be able to access this way. There's a sidewalk that's coming back in along that edge to take you to the main core of the building, also to the bike room. And then we'll have the large cafe space up in the front with Lisa style units. So these will be double height units on the first floor. We're asking for a 19-foot elevation currently on that level to promote those taller style units, so we can offer just a bigger variety of styles of housing in the building. The common floor plates from 2 to 9, predominantly 1 bedrooms, followed by studios and 2 bedrooms. And the upper floor will feature new amenity space, active rooftop, larger 2-bedroom units, and then the roof plan will be kind of holding quite a lot of space up there for a plethora of solar array as we work through the engineering details. 280, 42 of which would be affordable. I don't know the number of each type off the top of my head. There'll be 106 parking spaces accounted for. Building would, yeah, it would come down.
We're going to open up for questions, and we also want to bring a microphone around so everybody can hear you. So we have 2 microphones, and we have a team that's going to do that. So if you have a question, if you could put your hand up, we'd be glad to run that over to you.
Okay.
Okay, I walk that every day going to the Y, so I'm sort of familiar with it. The railroad track thing is a mess. It's got all these rocks falling down. I've told people over and over again, it's something that you're going to have to do because it's not where it came wrong. My question is, the arboretum and that whole other building, the one with the chimney, are all going for the sake of the building that you're making here? Clarified?
Yes, that's true.
All right, then I understood it correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
One of the old folks. Where there,
2 levels under the building. So there's a ground floor parking level that's the same elevation as the entrance on Washington. And then there's one other partial parking level that's accessed off of First Street. So the two parking levels don't actually connect with each other, but that's how the parking
but
lot
I
is.
didn't catch how many cars the parking covered.
106
For 200 and something apartments?
for 280 apartments. That's right.
That's not enough.
Well, you know, there's a lot of municipal parking resources around. I
You should
understand.
cover the own people, the people that are living there should have a parking place right there. They shouldn't have to be here.
I understand where you're coming from. Parking is it's very expensive.
How about reducing
and-
the height of the building then?
Well, at a certain point, nothing is there to the building. So
All right, then I will indicate that I have been letting the mayor know before I even moved to Old Folks Home, to the mayor, that this high-rise building that's going on here is totally out of proportion for the size and the structure of the roads. I'll tell you, I was totally opposed to high-rise, and then what do? I turn around and I move into Glory Terrace, which is 8 floors. I don't like the fact that I did that, but I had to do it financially. But there is so much going on. Are you paying for all of the water, all of the sewer, all of the stuff that the city has to change so that the toilets flush all around?
we're going to make sure the toilets flush for sure.
You're paying for all of those, everything that's happening,
Yeah, you
or
saw.
going to happen?
Sure, yeah, in our civil engineering plan, we have adequate taps to the city sewer and water systems, and we're paying for all those taps.
You won't be putting in any new ones of those big things?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Sewer?
Sewer pipes or anything?
So the city actually has a process, their engineering department, where they actually model the proposed flow rates. So we're going to be working with the city. We've already modeled that's what we anticipate, and those will be submitted to the city. But issues, improvements to water from our building to those mains.
So then how are you paying for any of what the city's doing?
So there's significant tap fees that Ryan and his team will have to fork out at the time of development. And those tap fees are actually designed for improvements, future improvements for all these mains. So yes, in a way.
And do you know how much the non-affordable housing is gonna cost?
We don't know exactly what the rents will be on those market rate units, reasonably similar to other new construction out there. You're going to charge similar to what you see in other new development. Also,
Please state your name if you could.
Affordable. What do you consider to be an affordable price? A lot of the units going in are upwards of $1,000 for a studio apartment that barely holds one person. And right up Washington Street here, they're just finishing a building behind the Michigan Theater that's like 12 stories, maybe 10.
the legacy, I think you're talking. Yeah.
And I don't think all those units have been rented yet. Putting in 280 new units is going to be fillable at a price that most people can't afford to pay.
Yeah, well, I think there's a pretty well documented housing shortage overall across a lot of different housing types. This is one specific type of housing and one project to contribute toward that shortage. In terms of what you asked about affordability, we're actually going, when I say affordable, that's a term dictated by MISHDA, the Michigan Housing Authority. On their analyses and tables, they go and measure the area median income, and then they give you what rent you can charge to be 60% AMI affordable. So that's what I'm talking about.
Hi there. I think language is really important. And so when you talked about the fact that you need this variance because you couldn't reach what was allowed
because you have to protect the historic area and you have the floodplain. Actually, that's what's allowed. What is allowed is because you have to, because, oh, we're not getting what we're allowed. Yes, that is developed sustainably and in a reasonable way. So it's fine that you're doing that, but don't act like you need to do it to get what you're allowed. So, you're asking it because you are requesting more than what would be allowed on that space. So I just think language is important. And related to that, you developers, the owners of the buildings, could you talk more about that? Have they told you they're ready for this and they made agreements with you and they want to move forward? And where are they at around that?
Yes, to answer your question, yes. I've met with them several times over the last several months, and we've worked out an arrangement that they seem to be very happy
So
about.
they're gonna go-
They're in support of the whole project.
And I know other people have a lot of questions too. So why, again, could you tell us, because there might be, and why you couldn't build that and still make a decent profit and keep something that's more reasonable that we could consider as residents? Because again, I think the footprints are really difficult in our community. Being a resident for 46 years, it's changing, and and it's not necessary. You could get a lot of housing out of that, and maybe it would.
Features like sustainability, features like affordability, those are expensive to implement in a building. And in order to support those features, as Ann Arbor, we value location.
Why you couldn't do
To implement.
So
So it's a trade-off of density and then these other goals of sustainability and affordability.
yeah, and the amount that you need to, that you decided
To get the project to actually
the profit
work.
you need to make. Okay, now I'm clear.
Right here, right? Yeah. Microphone.
Sorry, we have a microphone back here. Could we go with him first and we'll hand it to you? Okay, great.
My name's Mark Wishka. I live at 211 3rd Street, so not far from this site.
Nice to meet you.
Hi. So one of the things I'm concerned about is what's on Washington. So what you showed in this illustration is 120 feet up from Huron Street, but the site drops. So how tall is it on Washington? The other is that you're comparing it to the Y. Roughly on Washington, the Y is from your building to the Y. And what I'm not seeing here is a view from the neighborhood. What does this wall look like as we walk uptown? That's where my concern is. This thing is massive from coming up Washington Street. I mean, it will easily be 150 feet from what I'm seeing from your illustrations. I'm pretty sure it's at least pretty close to 20 feet difference between Washington and Huron.
It's a 15-foot height difference from as we go east to
Okay.
west across the site. So
All right.
at Washington, it
So
would be approximately 135 feet.
Okay. So again, is it possible, I understand what your issues are, is trying to make this affordable as a project. The city has provided specific guidelines or requirements, the affordability, the sustainability, all these recognizes that there is a needs to be pretty well ignored by most of the developers that are coming through and proposing things along the railroad tracks. I've lived here a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff come and go, a lot of stuff proposed. I'm not against density. I'm not against things coming into downtown. I recognize that there'll be many, many buildings downtown that are 1 or 2 stories that will disappear here over the next 10, 15 years because it's the infill. That's pretty much what needs to happen. But we gotta look at how does this integrate with the neighborhood, because there's a
I must say, George Famey, I live in Ann Arbor. I am a little discouraged by all the high-rise buildings. Now the Sounding lot becomes a high-rise. Now what do we got? Now we've got a lot of mass there. You go down Main Street, it's all mass. People-friendly. The mass doesn't make it people-friendly. And I think the height of this is going to be an eyesore in my opinion. And so I know maybe that's the economics, but it's not our economics, it's your economics.
Travis here. You guys talked about parking a minute ago. There are a lot of moans and groans about that. Can you maybe put that in context a little bit? You got a ratio of like 100 spots to 280 units. How does that stack up relative to, there's a million other towers going up across town. How do you guys stack up? Are you in the middle of the pack? Do you offer more parking as a ratio of units, less parking as a ratio of
Yeah.
units? That might help get people comfortable with what you guys
Sure,
are doing.
sure, yeah, great question. So they've got 5, and so their ratio, like you said, 106 spots in our
My name is Devin Stevens. I live at City Club. So I've been here about 4 years, moved to Ann Arbor 4 years ago. And I love our building, but I also know that when it was built, the developers sold this community a bill of goods. It is now arguably the ugliest and most poorly maintained buildings in downtown Ann Arbor. But I don't have as much of a question for you as I do a warning. Live in particular, especially coming out of the pandemic, was a sanctuary for our city's queer community when we lost Talbot. It is also a nationally renowned refuge for our senior community in Ann Arbor. It's also a home to our young adults in our community. So you are talking about this last word. They came to us and said, we have been like you. Because they have been taken advantage of time and time again. And I'm not saying anything against you, but these people are tired. They've lived here 50, 60 years, and they have heard the same line over and over again from people who come in and want to build beautiful buildings. I am pro-development, do not get me wrong. But that block has been a home to a lot of people, and they don't live there, but it's their safe space. So if you want to win these people over, you should have Watershed here tonight lending their support for you, not you telling us that they're behind you.
Yes.
Thank you, appreciate the feedback.
I see a bunch of hands over here. This person's been having her hand up for a while. I'm gonna pass it back over here, if you don't mind. State your name, please.
Hi, I'm Jenna Barrow. I'm a resident of Ann Arbor. I think my biggest question is your priority list, especially when it comes to building expensive property in a time like this, and when our political support is no longer supporting sustainable efforts and construction is getting more expensive. Once this thing is built, you will have valued engineered at that point, and I'm wondering what is your top priority to keep? Is it sustainability? Is it the affordable housing? Or is it just more units and more parking spaces? Thank you.
Great question. Yeah, construction is very expensive. It rarely comes down. To address that a little bit, you said why now, I think was part of your question. If you build it tomorrow, it's going to be more expensive. If you build it next year, it's going to be more expensive. So my mentality in this is housing is needed now 2 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever. So now is better than tomorrow, now is better than never, certainly. In terms of my priority list, I would say the affordability component is pretty important in that. I think that a sustainable building is really great. You're not going to solve climate change with one building, but you can make a really big impact in someone's life if you can offer a unit that's at least a little bit more affordable than some other stuff out there. So I would say if I was going to rank order the priorities, I would probably put the affordability, and then we'll do as many things as we can towards sustainability after that, depending on how the budget looks.
Hi, I'm Sean Cathewall. I live at 1403 West Liberty Street. I'm a PhD student. I grew up in Ann Arbor. The only reason I can afford to live in Ann Arbor is because my parents are rich. The people in my cohort, they live in, my other PhD student friends, they live in MC. They got to commute. The transit isn't worthwhile, so I'm very happy to see this project being built. I'm very happy to see 15% right at 60% AMI. I'm in favor, especially, I echo the concerns about losing lives and the last word, at least temporarily. And I think anything you have to do to formalize that commitment. I understand, obviously, business is business, and you can't set these kind of things in stone. But I think the community would appreciate that. Condition that this thing is getting built, that those spaces are going away. I would like this building to be even bigger, even taller. The more units we can add, the larger number will be 15% affordable to people making 60% AMI. So when you go before City Council and Planning Commission, I encourage you to ask for 12 stories or 15 stories. I think if we're building stuff in Ann Arbor, and if we're building things here, they should be big because we are developing into a real city. I love that this location is near the bus station. I love that this is walkable to so much of downtown, all the amenities that people love. I love that it's right by a lot of the wonderful bikeways that we've added in the city. So I'm in favor of a lot of this, for a lot of this project. Two questions that I have. So is there any interest in potentially offering residents transit passes through like the Go Pass program or other things with the AATA? And then also, as far as bike parking and resources, what's their access to the street like? Because oftentimes bike parking in, say, like an underground parking lot is a big pain. You gotta go up a ramp that's made for cars. You gotta go out the door. So what are the bike access facilities and transit access to?
Great, thank you. So first of all, I want to address your first point about the building being even bigger. Obviously, I think that's a wonderful sentiment. Also, there's a lot of practicalities of balance that even something like this, I think for a lot of folks in the room, this doesn't look balanced at all, but I think in the grand scheme of things, that could the building be taller? Like theoretically, yeah, we could go in and ask for a 1,000-foot building if we wanted to, but there's a lot of constraints and puzzle pieces that go into it. But to answer your question about the transit passes, I haven't necessarily thought that far ahead to that level of detail, but to give you an example of other stuff that I've done in the past, sort of similar, I have one project that is finished in Grand Rapids, another one that's under construction. Both of those offer residents immediately when they move in membership to the neighborhood association that's there. So one of the things that I really value is anybody who moves into one of these projects feels like a neighbor as soon as possible. And so I usually go and work with as many local businesses as I can to get coupons and gift cards and whatever, and neighborhood membership and that kind of thing, so that when they walk in, they get handed this pamphlet full of everything they need to at least go get started figuring out where their favorite burger is and where their favorite beer is and that kind of thing. So a transit card totally fits in that same concept. And then your second...
Bike access.
Bike access, yeah. We haven't nailed down exactly the location configuration of the bike room, but it would be on one of those parking levels. We typically would put some bike storage in units as well. Some people like to keep them in units, some people like to keep them in a bike room. But keeping it relatively close to the elevator, easy to get in and out for sure. All those are considerations we're working through right now.
Yeah, and then a request would be ADA access on all those doors, even if
Oh,
you're not
100%.
in a
Yeah, of course.
It's nice to press the button and push your bike out rather
Yep,
than getting
absolutely. Yeah. Regardless of your ability level, the push button thing is way better with a bike.
Okay, again, I just want to say, I'm a big fan of this project. I want more of this stuff in my town. So yeah, I wanted to make my voice heard here. Thanks.
I'm Margaret McCall. I'm a resident of Ann Arbor, and like Nishant, I just want to say I think this project looks really great to me. I'm interested in two things, like housing affordability. Given the housing shortage in town is really, we need projects like this, especially downtown. In my opinion, there should be no less controversial place to build a high-rise than downtown. So with that in mind, I think both the affordable components and the market rate components are going to play a really important role in alleviating Ann Arbor's housing shortage. And then I also really care about the environment, the climate. I know probably everyone in this room does as well, and I think that having denser housing near transit is basically the way that as Ann Arborites we can actually live that value. So I think I also share the concern of the person across the room talking about the loss of the nightclub being a hit to various folks in this room, myself included. So yeah, I would also love to see an agreement formalized to do everything possible to keep that alive. So I think my two questions are, what would that look like to have the nightclub and Last Word? Would they continue on? Would they be in the building or would they be somewhere else? And I would really love to see ground floor commercial. And so was there a consideration to do more than just, a coffee shop? We'd love to see like kind of everything on the street, make it really walkable and livable.
Sure, thank you for all those comments. So to address the live and Last Word question, live is a I'll say it's a tricky space to include in a multifamily building. A nightclub has a lot of sound engineering challenges, perhaps, if you're going to put apartments above it. So the last word is a bit easier to integrate into a building like this, and so the concept would be Live finds another home downtown, hopefully very close within maybe a block or two or something. But then last word may go with it and cohabitate like it does, but also this concept of a rooftop cocktail revisioning of last word might be a good fit. So it's something that the ownership over there is interested in. We're kind of working through some of the architectural and like planning details and stuff at the moment, but it's something that we certainly hope will happen. That's all I can give you at the moment on that one, just because there's a lot of boxes yet to check. And then remind me your second.
Other ground floor
Other ground floor commercial. So the site's a little bit tricky to do that because of the way that Huron slopes down toward the train tracks, and so to put any storefronts along that side, it would be maybe like not quite as ideal. Also, traffic is a lot faster on Huron in that section as you go down to the train tracks. So we felt that the best location for commercial is going to be right there at that kind of at the hard corner facing First Street. And then a coffee shop is a type of retail location that typically does pretty well, especially when you put a bunch of customers on top of it. It's a recurring purchase, it's a small dollar transaction, it's a place that people want to stay and hang out, and you can have residents enjoy it, you can have neighbors enjoy it. And so, building a gray box commercial space waiting for a candle shop or something to come in and rent the space, it's a little trickier to do when you can include something like a coffee shop. It's both an amenity for the building and it's a place for neighbors to come and hang out as well. So because of that site topography and then because of just the nature of a place like this, a coffee shop is at least something I know has worked well in the past. That said, the building doesn't exist yet. If you have any other retail requests, I'm happy to talk about it for sure.
Gentleman here and then over here. All right, David was UMS. After you're done, sir, can you pass this on? State your name, sir.
Yes, I am Doug Finch, live on Main Street. I understand any project has economics to make it attractive and viable to the developer. My question is, if you didn't get the variance to go to 10 stories and you were capped at 7, would you still do the project?
We'd have to take a very hard look at it. It doesn't work very well, I guess is probably the most I can say at the moment. We could strip out all of the thick windows and the solar panels and all of the stuff that's expensive and not technically necessary and cheapen the building as much as we can. Maybe something works, but like, is that, at a certain point, it's like, is it a project that I feel is deserving of the neighborhood? And I don't want to put up something that's really horrible and let it decay and have it fall apart. So there's balances across everything. So absent the height variance for what we're asking for, maybe it's a walk away and no housing gets built. Maybe it's something much smaller. We leave a lot of density on the table. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you, but
Sir, if you could stand and state your name too.
My name is Jerry Mack. I've lived in Ann Arbor for over 52 years. As I see maybe a few other people here have that tenure as I do, so, and some of us do not. So, whatever factors causes them to want to build and see big gleaming things, I don't know. But in my tenure here, I've seen Ann Arbor change quite a bit, and it doesn't look good. It looks ugly. It's no longer Ann's Arbor. The trees are harder to see. There's fewer downtown. The main streets, especially south of Main and Madison, where it used to be a nice looking area, is now a wind tunnel with high rises on both sides and variance to the street, which is deplorable. It's like a wind tunnel. There's no beauty in it at all. So we've seen Ann Arbor change. Do we want Ann Arbor to continue to be a series of glass and steel high rises, like some Beacon on the Hill? I like your drawing here. Do you have any pictures of your previous buildings that you built in San Diego and Austin that we could take a look at?
I don't have any loaded here. There's, if you go to my website, Talbot Development, or talbotdevco.com, you can see the pictures of the projects that I'm doing in Grand Rapids right now, for example.
Okay, and the city just had a lot where its maintenance garage was, like less than 100 yards away from your site. Why did you choose this site instead of the city's open space there that they have? Do they have other plans for that, or?
Are you talking about
Washington,
Kitty Corner 415 Washington?
Yes.
Yeah.
Used to be a city maintenance garage.
I've actually talked with the city about that site. There's that's a complicated site for some environmental reasons. It's a little outside of I'll call it my strike zone in terms of what I know how to execute. That said, it's not off the table to look at that site in the future, but you know, this part of the reason we're talking about this one is that it was for sale. So you know, it's that's a big part of the puzzle.
And I noticed from the drawing that it looks like it's more than 8 feet in the drawing there from the street to this building. 8 feet is not a very wide space between a busy street and the building. That's another problem that Ann Arbor has had on South Main Street, where these two other towers exist, is that there's not very much room for people to walk there. And the traffic is right there, it zooms by, it creates horrible noise and wind and blocks the sun. This looks like another sun blocker.
Got it.
Ann Arbor already has too many of those.
We know the sidewalk width there.
So, per DDA standards, the 8 foot is actually just for the walking zone. And then average across our frontages, we're looking to provide an 8 foot amenity zone as well. So the amenity zone will include your tree wells and or raised planters for all of your required street trees, your bike parking, your benches, your street lights. So average across our frontage would be 16 foot between face of building and back of curb.
And what is going in the back end on the ground floor? You say there's room for a coffee shop, which is a very small area there. What is the rest of the ground floor going to consist of?
So if you're looking down here, the coffee shop and lobby takes up this space in the front and goes maybe a window bay or two back this way. And then once you get along this side, these are actually units over here. These are those 2-story townhouse style units.
People's front doors.
All right, and they're going to enjoy looking out the window at the homeless center. Not there's anything wrong with being homeless, because I may be that way somewhere in the future if Ann Arbor property taxes keep going up to fund buildings like this, whereas the residential homes become unaffordable. So that's another big concern I have about all these big apartment buildings going up that are taking the potential away from homeowners to people to own homes in Ann Arbor. And there's a lot of vacancies in the ones that are still already up. Way too many. There's like 20%, if not more. I'm done.
Hi, I have a few questions also.
What's your name, ma'am?
Like he brought that up about the homeless Delano Center, right across the street from your development. Are you gonna have 24/7 security?
At night. Is it red? Red is on. You got yellow.
Yeah, sorry, the microphone died. I'll speak loud. Yeah, the building will be staffed, and we'll have lots of security cameras and things of that nature. I haven't gotten far enough down the road to tell you if there's a 24/7 security guard walking the property or not, but you know, it's an urban context. You know, it's downtown.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of neighbors.
Well, my experience, like I don't know, a lot of people have seen several homeless people. We assume they're homeless because they're sleeping right on, and it doesn't have to be across the street at the Delano Center. On actually where you're building at, on that sidewalk, I've walked by personally, and I know other people, other residents have seen people just sleeping or just you know, just loitering, like on the sidewalk. And it becomes like a dangerous situation, you don't know what they're up to or whatever, you know, things like that. It's not a good area. The crime is going up in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, people do hang out under the trestle there.
Yeah.
And then, I have another question, have you thought about making it since, I actually applied, I'm getting older myself, as well as like most of these people in here are elderly. I applied myself for, different cities to get affordable senior housing. I've had to wait 6-7 years with no phone calls from, other actually nicer cities than Ann Arbor, like such as like Birmingham. They have not called me like, I guess I applied 7 years ago. Have you thought about making it just a 55+ senior type of affordable building?
Do you mind if I take the microphone, sir?
Have I considered making it a 55+ senior building? I haven't. That hasn't occurred to me. If there's a place to do that, I'm happy to talk about it. But that's you try to specialize as best you can as a developer, so you can really nail what you're doing and make it the best you can. So I think learning how to do that really, really well would be something I'd have to take on for a little while. But I recognize there's a big need for that type of housing.
State your name, please. Thanks.
Hi, my name is James, and I'm the 한잔 포샵 owner in between like bar and that building. So I just opened my business 1 year ago, and I have a lot of Asian community. You know, there are a lot of students really happy for my business. But it's kind of unfair for just 1 year after the shutdown. I don't want to announce thing for that buildings, you know, the kind of destroyed. It's kind of unfair. So do you have any plan for those kind of explain to the U of M student? We have a big Asian community. They, after summer break, they're really happy for open that business. And just this is my question. Yeah.
You get it. It'd be faster if you could get up that center there, right? He wants to answer. He wants to answer.
Yeah, sorry, we're down to just one microphone. I appreciate the question. I would love to chat with you more, maybe offline. I was hoping to get in contact with you before this meeting, and I wasn't allowed to do that. So I'd like to connect with you offline and talk through that, if you don't mind.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Ring. I have 2 questions. One, who are you targeting as far as moving into this building? Is it families, is it students? Like, what sort of people do you think will want to live here? And the second question is, what is your timeline as far as like demolition and all this stuff? Like, what can we expect? And like, how long we have our spaces left for?
Thank you. This is not a student-targeted building. It's not one of those 4-bedroom, 6-bedroom kind of towers that are going up around the university. This is a building that has micros, studios, 1s, 2s, and then some of those like 2-story townhouse kind of things. So the target demographic here is for young working professionals who want to live, work, eat, play in downtown Ann Arbor. So will there be some students that live there? Probably, there's a ton of them around here, but that's not at all who we're marketing to or building for. And then in terms of timeline, we've got the Zoning Board of Appeals for the height variance coming up sometime this fall, and then depending on how quickly we get through that process, we would move then to the construction permitting process, and that can be a variable time frame. So it's probably sometime, I would guess a year, but timelines for pre-development around here can vary widely. So.
Hi,
were showing on the massing from the different sides of the building that you were going to add curb cuts on both First and Washington. In fact, that you were going to have your trash entrance be on Washington. Right now, Washington is a primarily residential street. You've got like a block and a half before you get to single-family homes. The adjacent block on that side of the building gets pretty busy with the Y as people are dropping and picking kids up off from events, going to the Y. But it is otherwise a pretty safe street for pedestrians and especially for bicyclists. What is your thinking about maintaining safety, especially since you were talking about having bike access for your residents on both Washington and First? How are you thinking about non-motorized vehicle safety at those entrances and maintaining safe speeds in the neighborhood as you move forward?
Thank you, great question. We are working with the city right now. We had our, in fact, our pre-submission meeting this morning, and that Washington entrance came up in the discussion. So we're in the process of a multimodal transit impact study that will work through a lot of those details around that Washington site, or Washington curb cut. And then just to clarify, we're not talking about a net add of any curb cuts. There's a curb cut on Huron right now that we'd be removing and then transferring it basically to First Street. So we're not adding any curb cuts, we're just moving one of them, and then that Washington one would remain in the place that it is. Any particular order that I should be going here? Okay.
I just a quick one. Hi, my name is Sally Crabb. My family's been here since the early 70s. I think I must have missed when you were talking about the rent structure and the tiered payments, how much they are, how much is rent. I have a couple questions.
Oh, sure. Do you want to tell me all your questions and I can answer it?
Well, I suspect you blew that off, that question, and that you didn't know how much rents were going to be.
We don't have final rents yet.
Okay, so give us what you got right now. I'm curious how you knew that you couldn't do a 7 versus 10 floor, yet you don't know what the rents are. And I'm curious how you got all this tens of thousands of dollars of drawings and planning and meetings and whatever, and you don't know what the rent is. If I went up and presented a project and said, I want you to do this extraordinarily disfavorable move, but I can't tell you how much I'm going to make, you know, I would be laughed out of the state. So please, if you want us to trust you, don't give us that. You already blew it with the old folks home thing. That was so incredibly offensive, and it's not funny. Look at the room, read the room, smell the coffee.
I'll say to his credit, he happens to be one of the most considerate people. For him to say that, I know that he's beating himself up right now.
Clearly not.
I know him very well.
Obviously not. If that comes popping out of someone's mouth in the senior center, would have been better.
So to answer your question about rents, what I have in the model right now, based on the MSHDA housing cost tables, the 60% AMI studios would be in the kind of mid $1,300 range for rent plus utilities all in. That's dictated by MSHDA. The market rate for studios in Ann Arbor right now is somewhere between, I would say $1,900 and $2,200 a month. The studios are kind of what I base a lot of the metrics on. I could circle back with you on the other rental types. The studios kind of set the bar for a lot of those other units. I don't know if that answers your question specifically or not, but not at all. The non-affordable for a studio would be somewhere in that $1,900 to $2,200 range or something, and that's kind of based on what it costs to build and finance.
What is a micro? A micro.
What is a micro? A micro is a smaller version of a studio. So the studios in this building might be 400 square feet, for example. A micro might be like 325 or something. I've built micros all the way down to 280 square feet before out on the West Coast, and for some people they just want a place to sleep and do a little bit of cooking, and then they're out, working or whatever. So it's meant to just offer another. It's a small a portion of what the building would be, but it's meant to just offer another option.
Right, we're here. The microphone now.
Hi, my name is Katie Waddle. I live on Miller.
I am here to register my support for any and all building of housing in the city of Ann Arbor. I want to, but I wanted to encourage you to be a little bit more creative about two things. The first is that as a grad student at the University of Michigan, I will not be able to afford to live in even the affordable housing in this building. And so this is not a building for me, which is fine. Not all buildings need to be for me. But I do walk past this building very, very often, including daily in the winter when I switch from biking to walking. I am really disappointed that the only thing you have on the ground floor is a coffee shop. There's 1,000 coffee shops downtown. I don't really feel welcome in the lobby of somebody else's apartment building. I don't like the idea of it being a combination lobby coffee shop. I especially don't, I'm a white person who feels comfortable in most spaces. I don't think many people who don't look like me would feel welcome in the lobby of somebody else's building. So I encourage you to think more carefully about how you're using that really prime real estate down on that bottom floor. The second thing I just wanted to say is that you're building directly across the street from a homeless shelter. And it just seems like there's gotta be something more creative that could happen in that location than 60% whatever the average, whatever was. Because nobody can transition from being homeless into 60% of the average median income. So you're basically just building a building that's never gonna be for the folks in the homeless shelter. So I just wonder if there's a way to sort of think outside the box a little bit more about, is there a way that there's transitional units in that building? Is there a way that that can be used in a more creative way? We're gonna, and not every building needs to be creative, but it could be. So just throwing that out there.
Sure, I appreciate both of those points. The ground floor retail, again, these are all drawings on paper right now. We have a certain box that says coffee shop / lobby. And it could be a variety of things.
Can I just add, like, I used to live in San Francisco, everything is on a hill, you can build retail on a hill. It's not an investment.
Fair, I appreciate it.
My name is Marshall Anderson. I work in the Almendinger building. I have one of my kids goes to the Y. I live up in Miller, so I spend a lot of time around this corner. And I also am very much in favor of increased density in the city. There's a major housing shortage in Ann Arbor, and it's very expensive to live here. So while again this is not for me either, I know that any additional housing in the city is going to be beneficial for everyone, especially just being able to afford continue to live in Ann Arbor. I agree with the ground floor retail. Any increased retail is beneficial. You have more people, there's going to be more business. Businesses are going to want to come in here with this much traffic around here. So I'm also interested in what kinds of things are going to do to make it easier for people to use public transit in this area. In addition to the comments about the Delanus Center, I want to know what kinds of things are going to do to build a relationship with the Delanus Center and the people there, making it be a friendly place for those people. As far as the parking, going along with the ground floor retail, parking is not super pleasant to walk by. If that's at the ground floor, it'd be nice to figure out a way to hide parking from the street. Also on Washington is a major safe bike corridor. Bikes go crazy fast in Washington, but that's also going to add to the danger of having access in Washington. So you mentioned that you're going to do a bunch of research on that, but paying really close attention to that. Also, the YMCA drop-off is right on the other side of the tracks where I pick up my 3-year-old. So all of that safety on Washington is super important. Not to mention the amount of foot traffic, just because there's so many people who live there. What are my notes? Sorry. I think that covers most of it, but I do appreciate the increased density. I want more people to live around here. I know people want to. I know it'll increase investment in the area as well. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for that, Marshall. Anybody else?
Yeah, I got one. David Ikes again. Just to comment on your ground floor units. Being a previous condo dweller over at 322 Liberty before on the second floor, I gotta tell you, if you're gonna have what I think are your high-end units down there on the ground floor, right on Huron, I don't think it'll fetch the rents. It's very noisy there with traffic and people and homeless place across the street. I don't think you'll make it there with the rents that you think you're gonna get. The ideas that folks have about doing some retail down there, that will be tolerant of noise, because you're gonna have noise, okay? High-end people, they all wanna be on top of the building. They don't wanna be on the bottom of it. You know, just my input from having done it for a dozen years.
Well, I appreciate it. All right, a couple more. I think she was first.
Sorry, one more question that came up when we're talking about pedestrian safety. I know a lot of these high-rises tailored to younger folks like me. Wouldn't be for me, it's definitely on my price range. I would say that the Uber deliveries have gotten out of hand with these high-rises, and I would hope you take in consideration how those block sidewalks and bike lanes and things like that, especially for high-rises right there in a very high traffic area. It's getting pretty annoying that they're parking right in front of busy intersections like that, especially as you're biking through. So I'm hoping that's taken into consideration as well. Please don't forget that.
Yes, it definitely is. There's an existing loading zone in front of Live right now, and then we'll also have an off-street loading zone with a turnaround so they can go out. So yeah, I'm aware of that issue. It's really annoying.
Here's somebody else over here. Yeah, you can say no. Okay. Yes, sir.
Dan Gunning, I think you're building like on top of Allen Creek or near it. Is it one side of the railroad tracks or the other? And then you talk about the floodplain aspect of it, what that means.
Yeah, I'll refer you to civil engineer.
So, my understanding is that Allen Creek is on the other side of the railroad. It actually goes underground for a portion of that section. As far as the floodplain, so the city has actually been remapping the floodplain. They've been doing a lot of work to improve reducing that section to floodplain. We've actually discussed this topic with the city. Their new models are indicating that we're actually going to be fully out of the floodplain, though we can't indicate that until FEMA adopts their models. So right now, what we're indicating is the FEMA floodplain, and a very small portion of the building is touching the floodplain. But again, per the requirements from Eagle and FEMA, we're not adding any fill to the floodplain.
Is that the Washington Street that would be touching it, or the west side, west border, or what?
Yeah, so where is the floodplain located? So there's a very small section on the southwest corner off of Washington, and then another small section off of the northwest corner off of Huron.
All right, any other questions?
We're in front row. So you get your
Terry, I've lived here for several decades. Whoever owns that building, you mentioned a little bit ago that it was for sale. That's what attracted you, right?
The atrium office building. Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't matter about Live or the Last Word or anything. They don't own the building. They have their businesses. If the owner wants to sell and you're game, that's the way it's going to be. My bottom line question is, as you also mentioned earlier, it's conceivable if you don't have any kind of bureaucratic red tape or whatever, you could be breaking ground this time next year. Is that right?
So to clarify your first point, there's two separate parcels that I'm talking about. So there's the atrium office building that was originally for sale, and then the ownership of Live and Last Word is common to both the real estate and the business. So that's a separate parcel, and that's a separate part of this whole story. So it's not that the real estate was for sale and I'm buying it out from underneath it.
Those business owners don't own that building anyway, do they?
The business owners of Live and Last Word own the building.
They do?
Yeah. There's. I think I'm not in their investor group, but I think there's common ownership between both the building itself and the businesses.
I was unaware. Anyway, bottom line, it could happen by this time next year, true?
Theoretically.
Thanks.
Very good.
Goodbye to life.
Your name, sir?
Daniel Marquardt, I live over on Summit Street. The suggestion was made earlier that the residential, single-family homes in the residential areas are underwriting projects like this. And I find that I would like to know your response to that. It just seems to be, I'd like to know the difference in revenue to the city between what's currently there and what kind of revenue this building would generate for the city of Ann Arbor.
Yeah, so that's a great point. A building like this will eventually be generating millions of dollars a year in property taxes for the city. And currently, as it sits, I'm not sure what the tax bills are, but it's maybe tens of thousands as opposed to multiple millions. So building a building like this eventually is very accretive from a tax standpoint for the city.
You have a question here? No? Okay. She has.
I have a two-part question. So, no. Hi, I have a two-part question. So, due to Trump's tariffs, have you had any extra construction potential costs, and how much would that be?
Are there tariffs? Aren't there tariffs? I'm not sure if anybody knows for sure. It's a lot to keep track of for sure. I can tell you one thing that does that I was really disappointed about is that there's a lot of cutting of incentives for sustainable features of something like this. So tax credits for solar panels, for example, are being phased out very quickly. That had me changing the model of like, okay, that doesn't work as well as it used to, and so energy, and also I don't know if you saw recently. This is a very nerdy thing to know, but the Michigan Building Code was recently updated, finally, from I would say 2015 up to 2020 or something. Like we're still many years behind, but immediately there were lawsuits filed saying, hey, this makes things more expensive. It makes things more efficient. And that efficiency is expensive, but there's already been lawsuits filed to say, no, stop the implementation of this newer, better plan. We want to build it the old way with leaky buildings and heat being lost out of the roof. So there's a lot of headwinds on the sustainability front right now. I'm really sad to say that that's true, but between the lack of tax incentives on solar panels and other sustainability features, also the code, which we're building to the new code anyway, regardless of what somebody's lawsuit says. I think it's the right thing to do. But the tariff impact, it's hard to tell. I can tell you that the steel in the building is going to be American source steel, and we're working on things like panelizing as many of these exterior wall panels as we can, right? So instead of building it all piece by piece on site and taking a long time to do it, having a lot of this prefabricated in a factory where we can get the insulation really well fit, and we can get everything looking, like put together really efficiently, and then we can bring it to the site and put it right on the building. So to the extent that we can minimize our manufacturing costs, we're going to try to do that. The tariffs are anybody's guess. If you have any tips, let me know.
The second part of the question is, how are you going to build it with lack of illegal aliens?
Jeez. Yeah, I have a construction project going right now in Grand Rapids, and we haven't seen any impacts. I think in Michigan in particular, there doesn't seem to be quite the same impact that you might have in the Sun Belt, for example. But we can talk about politics for a long time. But 260 deportations. Wow.
That made me think of something. Is the city giving you guys any incentive to build this building?
So we are pursuing a couple of state level tax abatements, and so that would be the Mishta Housing TIF program, that was just announced in summer of 2023. And then also possibly a neighborhood enterprise zone designation, which would also be, these are kind of nerdy things, but the answer is yes, there's some tax incentives and abatements that we're pursuing in order to get things like sustainability. The city sets, the technical answer is the city sets criteria for us to then qualify for those incentives. So the city is not necessarily, they're telling us what we need to do, and then we're doing what the city is telling us to do to qualify for the state level program, if that makes sense.
Hello, my name is Kirk Westfall. I have an office just 2 blocks away. I was curious about the curb cut movement from the pedestrian safety standpoint. I know there's no net increase in curb cuts, but one has been moved from Huron to First, as I understand it. Is there any, I was curious about how that choice was made, and also if there's any possibility of consolidating curb cuts on Huron or just on Washington, so you get sort of a double one in one spot versus spreading around?
Yeah, great question. We ended up in a previous iteration of the building or of the concepts, we had a single level of parking at the ground floor of the building and no curb cut on First Street. We ended up with a parking ratio that was extreme even by Ann Arbor standards. And I thought, man, there's gotta be a way to get some extra parking in there. And as you see in the site shape, it's really almost like a Tetris piece. It's really inefficient from a parking ramp standpoint. So if you were gonna have any multi-level parking, you can't have a ramp that cars can drive on without losing pretty much all of the efficiency of that level. So we looked at other ways to provide at least a little bit more parking, and that's how we got into that drive aisle, which we also realized had that secondary benefit of stepping the massing back away from the Allmendinger building, if that makes sense. So this drive aisle here is the solution we came up with that keeps us a little bit away, respectful from that building, but then also gets us that sort of half-second level of parking there. So it's a multiple step iteration design process, but that's ultimately where we ended up. And this is a condition we're looking at really closely with the city. They also are not a huge fan of a non-contiguous street front. So we're looking at ways to at least minimize that, or create conditions maybe with some sort of gate or something that at least helps the walking condition feel a little bit more contiguous there. The driveways would be one here. The question was, where are the driveways in the parking lot? One would be here off of First Street, and then the other would be around on Washington, so on this other side of the building. All right, any final questions? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate the participation and hearing about this proposal. I'll be around for a little bit longer if anybody wants to have a one-on-one chat. So thanks for being here.